Hello and welcome to the Tough Cover Podcast. I am your host, as always, Mark Henry Jr., and you can follow me at Mark Henry Jr. _. You could follow the podcast at Tough Cover Pod, and you could follow the Painted Lines at the Painted Lines. We are here again to talk about Week 3 in college football, but first, I have a quick plug here that I want to get out of the way before we dive into the college football. Everyone go buy the Jalen Hurts Rents Due shirt from the Everything's Fine podcast that you see me on Mondays, Wednesdays, and occasionally Mondays, Fridays, I should say, and occasionally Wednesdays when Bob Wankel's busy. So I am a co-host over at the Everything's Fine podcast. And yesterday, in bigger news here, I guess this will take me a second to bring up, but the reason I'm bringing up that shirt is because it went a little crazy on Eagles Twitter yesterday because Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, the new talk of the town, decided to wear it at Eagles practice and at Eagles media. So shout out to Kyle from the Everything's Fine podcast. Everyone go pick up a Rents Due Jalen Hurts shirt so you can be like Nick Sirianni. So let's get to college football. Last week I had a 6-0 college football slate. Unbelievable. I mean, we gave all the picks out here in the Tough Cover podcast. I think it was a 15 to 20 unit day. Just an unbelievable weekend. Followed it up with a really good NFL Sunday. So we have been red hot on the Tough Cover podcast. Dives is chiming in here. Good morning to you too, Dives. It's a little bit early for me, but I've got some stuff to do, so I got to get it out of the way so people can get the college picks since I went undefeated last week. Such a sick shirt. You're absolutely right. Everyone go pick up a Rents Due Jalen Hurts shirt. I'm picking mine up today. So we are going to get started, and we are going to start it off. So we have 9 straight bets here. We've got 9 picks. I've got 4 parlays. Yeah, Marky Mac said, let's make up for baseball. Don't look now. I'm red hot in baseball. I know I had a rough summer. I had a rough summer. But you look at my my MLB record here. I'm pulling it up right now. My MLB record in the last, I believe I've hit my last 9 bets. I've hit my last 9 bets, and I'm 11-2 in my last 13 baseball bets. I'm staying off the board today. If I were to make a pick, it'd probably be the Phillies. But I'm staying off the board. I'm focusing on college football. Last week in college football, like I said, we went 6-0. I believe that puts us at, do a little calculation here. I don't know. Really good. Really good. I believe we're at 26-9 over the last week. So let's get it started. And we are going to get it started with my straight bets and started in a game that everyone knows about, everyone wants to talk about, Florida, Alabama. So let's get it started with a game of the day. Even if it's not on College Game Day, it's still the biggest game of the day even if it's on CBS at 3:30. I'm going chomp with the Florida Gators plus 15.5 versus Alabama as a home dog for 1.5 units. I don't have a strong take here. This is the game of the week, like I said, and I've been hot, so I'm going to take a hunch here because I want to watch the game. I want to have some rooting interest. I honestly kind of hope Florida goes down like 14-0. Maybe Emory Jones turns it over because then they would go to AR-15 full time. I think Anthony Richardson, their backup, who is an electric freshman wearing Tebow's number and a potential future Heisman and the exact type of QB who has given Saban problems and who is also molded well in a Dan Mullen offense. This is a Dan Mullen quarterback for sure. Emory Jones, I mean, he is the mold of what gives Alabama problems, but way too many turnovers from the former 5-star in Emory Jones. So I really hope AR-15 gets as much playing time as possible in this game. What a nickname, by the way. I'm not confident Florida can stop Alabama. I'm not going to tell you that Alabama is going to score 20 points in this game. Or even, I'm not confident they'll slow Bryce Young down. I'm not even going to tell you Florida won't score 40 points in this game. But like I was just talking about with AR-15, to give you a little reference, he has 275 rush yards in basically 2 halves. He's basically played 1 full game. He has 275 rush yards and I think over 300 pass yards. The dude is something else. He's something to be seen. I hope that they let him, shine on a big stage today. That would turn it into a really fun game, in my opinion. Florida has not beaten Alabama since 2008, and they've lost 7 straight. Mullen is 0-10 against Alabama, whether that be at Florida or Mississippi State. Obviously not inspiring numbers, but I was very impressed last year with Florida hanging with one of the best team ever, losing by 6 to Bama and covering. I think that line was around 9 or 10. I was all over Bama. I remember I was absolutely shocked that Florida was able to hang in that game, and that kind of gave me some hope for Florida as a 15.5 home dog here. I think that's down to 14.5 or 15. I still like it anywhere over 2 touchdowns, but I'm happy that I got it at plus 15.5. I personally think this is a 1-possession game in the fourth quarter. So Florida plus 15.5 versus Alabama for 1.5 units. Let's move on. Stick in the SEC, though, at 4 o'clock. I like Mississippi State -3 at Memphis for 1.5 units. I was extremely impressed with my guy, Brandon Walker's Mississippi State Bulldogs against the NC State Wolfpack last week, and I was very impressed with Will Rogers. I know a lot of people have talked smack on the Mike Leach offense at Mississippi State and, are not impressed with Will Rogers. I thought he was very good last week against a good team in NC State that I had ranked in my top 25 last week. Mississippi State has won 12 straight against Memphis, and they have won 6. I believe that's 6 straight on the road. Memphis has not won a game in this rivalry since 1993. So I think that, Mississippi State is a clearly better football program than Memphis. Obviously, Memphis could have a big moment today, and that would be a very large moment in the history of their football program. But I like Mississippi State's odds to win this game and to cover. Memphis let Arkansas State score 50 points. 50 points to Arkansas State. By the way, we'll be talking about them in a minute. So even though Memphis won, they have a ton of concerns defensively. Mississippi State has not been able to run the ball whatsoever, but they also have shut the run down. So that'll be a big-time X factor in this matchup. Is Mississippi State able to run, and are they able to continue to completely shut the run down? So I have a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. Mississippi State wins and rolls here. I think they win by a couple touchdowns. So let's move on to my next game. I just mentioned them, Arkansas State. I'm sticking with them here this week after putting up 50 and covering last week against Memphis. Arkansas State plus 17 at Washington for 2 units. And then I'm also going to do a little sprinkle here. Arkansas State plus 580 on the money line at Washington. Washington is a 17-point favorite, yet they've only scored 17 points in their 2 games. Vegas, they continue to just give Washington a ton of credit. Arkansas State, like I said, they dropped a 50 burger in Memphis. I don't think Washington can score whatsoever. I think Jimmy Lake, their head coach, should be fired. I think he will be fired if they lose this game today. Washington had an absolutely embarrassing loss in week 1 to FCS School Montana, followed by a shellacking at Michigan. So I think this is finally, this is going to be a dark year and maybe the start of a dark period for UW in Washington. Chris Peterson is not walking through that door. So I think this is the game that finally gets Jimmy Lake fired. I'm going with 2 units on them to keep it within the number at 17. But I'm also, taking that 1 unit swing on the money line because if they win, that's 5.8 units off 1 unit alone. So I like that money line a lot. I don't remember the last time I've seen a 17-point underdog in college football that I think has as good of a chance to win a game outright than I see with this Arkansas State team at Washington today. So moving on to 6 o'clock. I'm sorry, John Jansen. I'm sure you'll watch this late, but I'm going with Marshall minus 9.5 versus John Jansen's Fighting ECU Pirates. 82% of the bets and 90% of the money coming in here on the Marshall Thundering Herd. Sometimes the public gets it right. ECU kept it close against South Carolina and App State, but they haven't scored 20 or more points yet this season. Marshall, on the other hand, has scored 49 and 44 against 2 cupcakes. And really, their quarterback, their star sophomore quarterback, Grant Wells, hasn't even really gotten going yet. I view this as the spot to get Grant Wells back on track and back to early 2020 form. Marshall is simply the better team here. Give me Marshall minus 9.5 for 1.5 units versus ECU. We are Marshall. So let's move on to the next game here. Another stinker. The money is in the crumbs, folks, and that's my take on this week. We will get to the game day game at the end here, but at 7 o'clock, I have Charlotte plus 4.5 at Georgia State for 1.5 units. I simply think Charlotte is the much better team here, and I think we're getting a hell of a value with them as an underdog, let alone a 4.5-point underdog. Charlotte is 2-0 with 2 covers, including a win against a Power 5 school, barely, in Duke. Georgia State lost as a 3-point favorite to Army by 33 points. UNC has also beat them by 42 points. Charlotte averages over double the amount of passing yards, double the amount of rush yards, so obviously more than double the amount of total yards than Georgia State does. And Charlotte has a very exciting QB in Chris Reynolds. Give me Charlotte plus 4.5 for 1.5 units over Georgia State. And going to another blah game at 7:30 in the Mountain West. I think this is actually going to be an interesting game, though, for college football sickos and nerds like me. Utah State plus 9.5 at Air Force for 1.5 units. Utah State is 2-0 in the standings and against the spread, including a Power 5 win against Wazoo as a 17.5-point underdog. Air Force has been by no means bad. They absolutely crushed a cupcake, and then they killed a bad Navy team last week. But they can't throw the ball, and they struggle to score points at times. Even last week, they only scored 23 points. This is just, quote, too many points, as Big Cat would say. This is just too many points, 9.5 points. This should be, I think, around 4.5. This should be under a touchdown, in my opinion. Utah State is looking for their first 3-0 start since 1977, and I actually think they get it in an upset. So I'll throw out my first parlay number 1 at plus 1,300. Throw Charlotte's money line, Utah State's money line, with the Kansas City Chiefs money line for Sunday Night Football. That pays out 13-1. If Charlotte and Utah State win today, that means that you basically can have $100 to win 1,300, $10 to win 130. So I like that a lot. You can even hedge on that Chiefs game if you'd like. I think both Charlotte and Utah State win as outright underdogs. So now we get to my bet of the day, my play of the day, my lock of the night. But I have some bad news, folks. A lot of you Penn State fans aren't going to like it. But I'm waiting to bet this. I'm taking Auburn. I absolutely love Auburn tonight. And I already bet their money line at plus 200 for 3 units. I'm waiting on the spread. It was at 6.5 where it opened this week at 6, got up to 6.5, down to 4.5. I believe it's around 5.5 right now. I'm going to try to wait until after College game day, after the Penn State homers start pouring in money on Penn State. I'm going to hold off. I'll get in on plus 4.5 if I have to, if it drops that low. But I'm going to try to hold off until I can get that at around plus 6.5 or around plus 7, ideally. So I would wait off on that Auburn line until tonight. But I love Auburn, and I love Auburn plus 200 to win outright in Happy Valley for 3 units. Both of those plays will be for 3 units. I know what you're thinking, but Mark, it's the whiteout. You can't bet against Penn State in a whiteout. Maybe not true if you look at the stats. Penn State is only 8-8 in whiteout games and 9-7 against the spread. Shout out Katie Ponticio for those stats. Everyone go give her a follow. She's good for college football stats on Twitter. This is not a gimme for Penn State. I've heard a lot of smack talk about Bo Nix from the Penn State fans, Bo Picks, all whatever you want to say. And that is just absolutely rich and hilarious to me with Sean Clifford at quarterback. I'll take Bo Nix all day long over Sean Clifford. Auburn has been pretty good defensively, obviously against 2 complete, nothings, 2 complete cupcakes of teams. But everyone I know is on Penn State. Everyone I've talked to about the game is on Penn State. Every gambler is on Penn State on TV. Every podcasting personality thinks Auburn has no chance to go into Happy Valley. I'm happy to roll with the Auburn Tigers here. War, damn, Eagle. And I'm not going to read my top 25 this week. I know I did that last week. I'm going to do it again next week in a bit of a rush here. So let's finish off with my parlays. I gave out the big money one. That's the big one. These are a bit more sure things. These are a bit more, in my opinion, locks. I'm not going to call them locks, but they're closer to, I'm taking a shot with that Charlotte, Utah State, Kansas City Chiefs moneyline parlay. 13-1, that's taking a shot. These are a little bit closer to even. So, and they all involve the Cincinnati Bearcats at 12 o'clock. This team is going to win the game, but I've seen way too many times with Luke Fickell at Cincinnati, they don't care about covering spreads. I think this could be a very, very close game, maybe even a garbage time touchdown for Indiana at the end of the game. The spread's around 4.5 for Cincinnati, -4, 4.5. But I think they could win this game by 2-3 points. I'm staying away from the spread. So I just went money line, and I threw it with a couple other teams that I like today. I already talked about Marshall. I already talked about Mississippi State. Parlay 1 is Cincinnati -170 with Marshall -390 for 1 unit. That's at -100. That's at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Parlay number 2 is Cincinnati -170 and Mississippi State, which I already talked about, at -165 for 1.5 units. That's at 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and that is +160. And then my last parlay of the day is Cincinnati -160, Boise State -178 for 1 unit, and that's at 12 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. Let me run down my straight bets here. I just gave you my parlays, but my straight bets, we've got Florida +15.5 versus Alabama for 1.5 units. Mississippi State -3 at Memphis for 1.5 units. Arkansas State +17 at Washington for 2 units. Arkansas State +580 at Washington for 1 unit. Marshall -9.5 versus ECU for 1.5 units. Charlotte +4.5 at Georgia State for 1.5 units. Utah State +9.5 at Air Force for 1.5 units. Auburn probably around 6, maybe gets to 7 at Penn State for 3 units. Auburn +200 on the money line at Penn State for 3 units. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being a part of the Tough Cover Click, and hopefully this Saturday can even be somewhat as enjoyable and profitable as last Saturday was on the Tough Cover podcast. So thank you for listening. Please follow at The Painted Lines. Please subscribe to The Painted Lines wherever you're watching this. Please follow at Mark Henry Jr. _ and at Tough Cover Pod and at Everything's Fine. Enjoy the winners.